Welcome to the JW Thoughts Studio. My name is Wally, and we are here to watch the part 2 of the 2020 annual meeting of Jehovah's Witnesses. Please feel free to drop a like down below. Apparently I'm supposed to say that at the beginning of the video, but it really does help me out a lot. It helps the video get out to a lot more people on YouTube, and I would very much appreciate it. If you do find yourself liking some of the content that I'm making, please subscribe to the channel as well. That helps me out a lot, and just helps me know that the work I'm trying to do here is being appreciated. But anyway, let's jump right into the part 2 of the 2020 annual meeting.
We are happy to continue with the annual meeting program.
Yes, we are.
We now have with us Brother Len Myers, a helper to the writing committee, who will conduct an interview with wives of branch committee members in the United States. Brother Myers, please.
The accounts of faithful women are found throughout the Bible. One faithful Christian sister is mentioned by the Apostle Paul at Romans chapter 16, verses 1 and 2. There he mentions Phoebe, who proved her...
So, one thing that I definitely think the watchtower should avoid in general is women in the Bible. Because yes, there are a few examples of where something positive was said about women, or there was a positive example given. But the Bible's full of misogyny. I mean, it goes right through it. Women are not of the same value as women. So I just always find it curious whenever they try and sprinkle in some of the examples, like, oh, let's talk to some of the faithful wives and see what they have to say. I mean, I think that's good, and I think that's a positive thing for the organization to do, but my goodness, do they have a long way to go before they can really stand up proudly and say, oh yes, we treat women with perfect equality. Let's keep going.
Herself to be a defender of many, including Paul. Today, we're blessed to be able to get to know faithful Christian sisters who share something unique. All of them are wives of brothers who serve as members of the United States Branch Committee.
They're wives of the members.
Sister Snyder, we'd like to get to know more about you. Can you please first tell us how you got the truth?
I was introduced to the truth by my parents, and Jehovah used the example of my sister and the nurturing love of older ones in the congregations to draw me to him.
Then how did you start in the full-time ministry and then into Bethel service?
Well, it was a bit of a test. When I was in my late teens, a friend of mine died, and I couldn't understand why Jehovah would allow this to happen to such a kind person. So an elderly pioneer sister encouraged me to do deeper research on the issue of universal sovereignty. And this not only comforted me, but it caused me to reevaluate my priorities and to see if I truly believed Jehovah would take care of me if I really put him first. So I started pioneering, put college on hold, and it wasn't long before I was broke and the rent was coming due. And so the next meeting, I quietly put my last $50 in the contribution box and thought, that's it, I'm done, doesn't work, I'm going back to school. But that evening, I learned that Matthew 6:33 is undeniably true. Jehovah surprised me and cared for all my needs from the most unlikely sources, and he hasn't stopped caring for me since.
And then you joined.
I gotta work. I gotta talk. Okay. Okay, big man. Okay, big guy. So this concept that Jehovah will just take care of your needs, and that you don't have to worry about college. You don't have to worry about schooling. I mean, she said she put in her last $50 to the contribution box. I was the account servant for a while, and when you do that for long enough, you kind of get a good gauge on who's actually donating money and who's not. And I mean, I have to say, there's so many people that don't give $50 a month. I mean, so many witnesses that don't give $50 a month. And yet you have this poor girl who didn't go to college, so that way she could keep pioneering. Her rent is coming up on due. And she gives her last $50 to the organization and just throws it recklessly into the wind, like, well, I guess this is it. Here's my last $50. I'm going back to school. And I mean, maybe they'll describe it here in a minute about how exactly that the supreme being of the universe, came down and helped her. Because I am sure that it was a generous friend, or she told somebody and that person told somebody else, and like, well, we can't have our dear pioneer sister, get kicked out of her house or anything like that. Because for all the negative things you could say about the organization, one positive thing is they do care for their members, but that's, right throughout the community. That's right. It's true even within people's own friend groups, even other religious institutions. If someone is in that desperate of a need, they'll help them out. And the funny thing to me is that the Watchtower doesn't have any particular program which someone could go to and say, hey, I have this need. It's all reliant on generous brothers or sisters that would help someone out that was going through a difficult time. So the Watchtower will use this as a story, basically, to say, look how great the organization is because all the members are cared for. And yet the organization isn't the one that's actually caring for anybody. They're just the ones taking the money from the pioneers, taking the money from the regular brothers and sisters, and then not helping this pioneer sister when she's in need. So then the people that they already took money for have to help her out as well. And all of that is so that way the organization can say, oh, look at the love that we have amongst ourselves. So I just find that whole story crazy. I feel like I missed a little bit at the start because I had to deal with ZZ. But anyway, we will keep going. Hey, don't get on my timer. Okay.
In Troy, in Bethel service later on, right? Now, what assignments have you enjoyed at Bethel?
I've enjoyed housekeeping. I really enjoyed a lot of assignments within transportation department. And I was one of thousands who worked on the Warwick and Tuxedo construction projects.
Now, as the wife of a branch committee member, you have a demanding schedule. Can you explain one challenge?
Well, like most wives of good shepherds, I would love to have more time with my husband.
That's understandable. So what practical things have you done to deal with that challenge?
Well, prayer, study, and meditation has reminded me that we're at spiritual war. And we're at war, our priorities have to change.
Whoa.
So I can't long for ideal circumstances, although they're coming quickly. Right now, it's about advancing pure worship. And while it's important to maintain a healthy and close relationship with Troy, my primary joy should be in Jehovah. And then second is remembering the sacrifices that were made for me. Of course, Jehovah gave up 33 years with his best friend for me. And also there were sisters when I was single and pioneering who would invite me over for lots of meals, go out in service. They would even send their husband out on freezing cold, dark nights to fix my car, which broke down often. So I'm grateful. And the main way I can show this appreciation is to imitate their examples.
Now, with challenges come blessings.
People helping.
What's one blessing you enjoy as the wife of a branch committee member?
Increased peace that comes from having complete confidence in how Jehovah directs and blesses the decisions his organization makes through the governing body. If I were not married to a branch committee member, I may never have known just how much the brothers rely on Jehovah's Spirit and how much time they spend, long periods of time in prayer, and how much they deeply, deeply love the friends. So I'm embarrassed about how much worrying I've done in the past about these things, but now it's a lot easier to just be supportive and listen, obey, and be blessed.
It might just be me. Maybe it's just me. But you almost get this glowing sensation from her, I guess. Like, if I wasn't the member of a branch committee member, I wouldn't understand. As if to say, you people out there, you plebeians, you guys can't understand. but because I've been blessed. I mean, it is when he asks her, what are the blessings? It's like, well, I'm the wife of a branch. And that's the funniest thing, is because she's so proud of her husband's title, and that's all she can have as a woman in the organization. She can just have, the attachment of, well, what is your husband? Oh, I'm an elder's wife. I'm a circuit overseer's wife. I'm, whatever it might be. And sure, she gets to be involved in, the housekeeping and some of the construction projects, but what's stopping her from being on the branch committee? There's no reason for her not to be, other than the fact that she doesn't have a penis. It's kind of wild, but we'll just keep going.
Very nice. Now, as you look back on your rich spiritual life in Jehovah's service, is there an experience you can share with us?
Oh, baby.
We were visiting a small branch in a developing country that had been ravaged by decades of civil war. I'd never seen poverty like that before. And one evening, I went into the dining room to gather dinner for us. But before getting the dinner, I stopped and talked to a lovely young brother. At one point, I turned around and noticed that all the food had been taken. And I said, "There's no more food." Now, this young brother hadn't eaten either, but he just shrugged and said, "It's just hunger," and continued zealously talking about his assignment. Now, this brother was a commuter,
It's just
very
hunger.
thin, and so it was likely that he might not eat that night or maybe even the next morning. But the way his face glowed when he talked about his assignment, it was clear that his joy was not based on anything physical or the lack of anything physical. So I really treasure this lesson because it's made me want to more appreciate what I do have currently and to imitate his example and focusing on what's truly important.
I think that's a little crazy to just be, on the annual meeting program, and that, essentially all witnesses are going to hear this, and you're talking about this person that, was obviously hungry in a third world country, and because he was chatting it up with the overseer's wife, or I don't remember the position they had at the time, but, whoever she is, that she was probably well known, and he's chatting it up with her, and all the food goes away, and he's just like, well, it's just hunger. That's a major problem in the world. That's huge. And again, where's the organization making sure that their people are being taken care of? Clearly Tony Morris has plenty to eat. Clearly most of the governing body members, if not all of them, are eating very well. They're not missing any meals. So how is it balanced? How is that, everyone's on an even playing field in Jehovah's organization? We're all just fellow workers. No, you're not. This kid has to say, oh, it's just hunger, and maybe not have food that night or the next day. And yet Tony Morris gets to spend over $800 on liquor. That's crazy.
And I think you told me that he did get some food that night, so we're happy about that.
Oh, yeehaw. Okay.
Thanks for letting us
I
get to
just
know
went on that
you
rant
and
for
for sharing
no
that
reason
experience.
whatsoever. Oh, well.
Now we'd like to get to know Sister Sherelle Georges. Sister Georges, can you tell us how you got the truth?
When I was 11, my mother started to study. Another sister studied with my two sisters and myself out of the book, From Paradise Lost to Paradise Regained.
Old light.
2 years later, on November 13th, 1971, my mother, my oldest sister, and myself were baptized.
And how did you start in the full-time ministry?
As teenagers, a pioneer couple assisted us when we temporary or vacation pioneered, as it was called then. That led me to want to regular pioneer after high school. However, after graduating, I started working full-time. It was at a district convention where the point was made, if you're not pioneering, tell Jehovah why. Well, I really didn't have a good reason, so I started making plans to work part-time. It was in September of 1980 when I realized my goal of regular pioneering.
And how did that lead to Bethel service?
While pioneering, I had the opportunity to assist with the Brooklyn Assembly Hall renovation project on Thursdays. It was one Thursday I learned of an announcement made at Bethel. Sisters could now commute. So after a while, I turned in my application and started commuting in November of 1987. But before commuting, I had met Luther, we started to court, and then later we were married and accepted as a couple to Bethel.
And what assignments have you enjoyed at Bethel?
While commuting, I worked in the dry cleaning department and continued there after marriage. For a short time, I worked with the Brooklyn warehouse department. Then Luther and I received a surprise assignment. We were asked to assist at the Jamaica branch starting in March of 1995.
I just remember how interviews would go whenever you are on stage at an assembly, and it's always like this formula where you have to talk about, well, what have you done for Jehovah? What have you done for the organization, essentially? And when you're on the outside, you realize like, oh, so this is just like a tool that's used to pressure people. Okay, well, the people that we lift up, the people that we hold on a pedestal that get these special privileges, we want them to walk around basically talking about it. And that's used as a disguise to say, oh, well, it's encouraging to see. Well, if it's encouraging, they could just kind of talk about, some of their experiences or some of, the joys they faced. But no, they always have to throw in that question, well, what assignments have you had? And then you get into the blessings, because it's all about the titles and assignments. And I remember every single assembly or convention part I gave, it was always about, oh, okay, well, what assignments have you enjoyed in Jehovah's service, or, whatever it might be. But anyway, we'll continue.
There I worked in alterations, laundry, kitchen, housekeeping, shipping, and Bethel office. Then in 2014, the Jamaica branch merged with the United States branch. We were invited to serve back in the United States, first at Patterson, where I worked in audio-video services, and now at Wallkill in service department.
Now, you two have a demanding schedule. Can you explain one challenge?
Well, many of the assignments that Luther has involves traveling. So that means that we're away from our congregation, sometimes for weeks. It also means that we're not able to get back to our return visits and Bible studies on a weekly basis.
So what practical things have you done to deal with that challenge?
We found it helpful to let the friends know whenever we would be away. Many times we would receive a text from them just saying hi, checking on you, hope you're doing well. This really helped us to stay connected. What else we did was to invite publishers to go with us on our return visits and Bible studies. This way, whenever we were away, they could keep the interest going.
That's a good idea. What good habits did you form early in life that help you now as you support your husband?
Growing up, my mother taught us to be content and to share whatever we had. One Watchtower article stated, "True contentment comes from loving and being loved." We grew up in a loving family, and then learning about Jehovah and his love as I grew older helped me to find contentment in Jehovah's service. So whatever assignment I have, I try to be content and view any differences as an opportunity for me to learn about the various aspects, unique personalities, and qualities of my brothers and sisters.
Now, as you look back on your rich spiritual life, is there a memory you can share with us?
Proverbs 10:22 says, "The blessings of Jehovah, that is what makes one rich." I feel as if I have been enriched in so many ways with so many memories. One memory is being able to assist in the former Jamaica branch for over 19 years. Working together with the brothers was such a unique privilege and really encouraging. To see the brothers exhibit their faith and loyalty in Jehovah despite various challenging circumstances was a true encouragement for us. We made many friends in that assignment, and we continue to keep in touch to this day.
That is a nice memory. Thanks for sharing that with us. Finally, we'd like to talk to Sister Sunny Chicky. Sister Chicky, can you tell us how you got the truth and then entered the full-time ministry?
My mother raised me and my two brothers to serve Jehovah. It was difficult for her because my father left the truth and our family when we were very young, but she set a very good example for us. And then because of the encouragement of young pioneers in our congregation, I began regular pioneering in the Pasadena, California congregation after I graduated from high school in 1962.
I find it interesting how many times they'll make the specific distinction, like, oh, well, they left the family and the truth. It can never just be like, oh, well, they left the truth, but they always make it about, oh, well, this person left the truth, and therefore they left the family. We don't know the circumstances, but just that language I remember so well. Whenever you were a believer, that it was hard to separate the difference between, someone that say, okay, divorces happen. That's not the worst thing in the world that can possibly happen. Sometimes, well, I won't say oftentimes, but sometimes it is the best thing to do for everyone involved. And to say, oh, well, it's because, they left the truth and then they left the family. Well, sometimes, marriages just don't quite work out. But anyway, maybe I won't even put that in there. But I just thought that was interesting how she said that, because I remember thinking it so well.
And how did that lead to Bethel service?
I served in a few other areas where the need was great, in New Mexico, Northern California, a special pioneer assignment in Iowa, and then a small congregation in Mississippi. Tom was a Brooklyn Bethelite, and he came down to Mississippi to dedicate a Kingdom Hall in May 1981. We met. 7 months later, we were married, and we were accepted to serve as a couple at Bethel.
Nice. What assignments have you enjoyed at Bethel?
I was a housekeeper for my first 3 years.
Everyone's
and
a
now
housekeeper.
I've been in laundry for 35 years. I did have a part-time assignment in grounds maintenance for a while, but now I joyfully serve full-time in the Wallkill Laundry.
Now, you too have a demanding schedule. Can you explain one challenge?
Meeting so many wonderful friends in our assignments, I like to keep in touch with them, but time is so limited, so I feel that can be overwhelming at times.
So what practical thing have you done to deal with that challenge?
Well, I love to write cards and send letters, so that's how I deal with this, and to be able to keep in touch with my friends, and that really helps a lot.
So what has helped you to be balanced despite your busy schedule?
I love the March 2016 broadcast that stressed 3 things. First is count your blessings. We are part of an amazing organization that is carrying on the most meaningful work of preaching and teaching.
I would disagree.
A second is look at the big picture. When I feel stressed out, I try to put things in the right perspective. Jehovah's sovereignty first, foremost, and not focusing on myself. And that helps me to keep calm. And third was get enough rest. Without enough rest, I can't think straight, and even ordinary activities in my routine seem overwhelming or too much.
That's very practical. Now, is there a particular experience you'd like to share with us?
So stories like this always make me kind of sad, because you think, this lady has literally given her entire life to this organization and doesn't actually understand the foundation of her entire life. If the sum total of everything that she's accomplished, on the limited time that she has on this planet, and it was all for furthering an organization that told her, the end is going to be, before this group of people dies, or it probably is going to be on this date, or I guess we should use the right word. What did they say in the 1975? Wouldn't it be appropriate if the end came at this date? They use this sort of language, and it just keeps going and going and going and going, and she's been going along with it. And I just find it so incredibly sad, because it honestly is, a waste in some ways, because we don't know what this lady might have been able to do. And yes, she's made a lot of friends. Yes, she's probably had a lot of joy. Everything when you're inside the organization isn't terrible. You do make good memories. You do have a lot of maybe inner peace, but sometimes that comes totally artificially. But knowing that it's all built on a lie, that it's all built on some guy's opinions trying to hold this organization together for so long, just makes me incredibly sad. And it reminds me of my grandmother, because she was a second generation witness, I think. Yeah, anyway. And let's see, that was a year ago. Was it 2 years ago now? No, I believe a year ago. She passed away. And I guess for a long time she was in the hospital and was very sick. I think she had ended up finally getting it correctly diagnosed that she had ALS. And it was really sad because I didn't know that she was sick or anything, because my parents or any of my family didn't reach out to tell me. And come to find out later, she had, even when she couldn't talk anymore, she had written some notes saying that, I want to see Wally. And they still, even at that, didn't want to reach out to me. And as far as I know, I'm not disfellowshipped. And it's crazy to think that they have, this language that they'll pull out whenever they're in trouble or someone's questioning them about shunning, where they'll say, well, the disfellowshipping process won't, hinder any necessary family business. And I would consider a woman on her deathbed, saying, hey, I'd really like to see my grandson one more time before I die, unnecessary family business. But in their minds, even though I'm not disfellowshipped, even though, I wasn't active or an activist at the time, even despite all of that, they are still so blinded by what they're told by the organization. And just watching her tell her story just reminded me of how really just sad of a life it is, because she was the same way. She pioneered for 50 years or even longer, I think, and just gave everything she had to the organization. And that are the principles that she lived by, although some of them were good, the organization still controlled the minds of those that she loved to such a degree where they wouldn't carry out, one of her dying wishes. Oh, I want to see my grandson. Nope. The organization makes people so deluded, just like this, and I'm sure she's a lovely lady, but just like her, she would just be completely blinded, even to something that I consider, very immoral. But anyway, that was probably a little bit too long of a story, but it just kind of reminded me of my grandma. But we will pick it up again at 1325.
When I was special pioneering in Iowa, I married a brother who was a pioneer and then became an elder. And so I continued in the congregation as a regular pioneer. After several years, he became an apostate, and he tried to encourage me to go with him, but I refused. The elders made great efforts to help him to recover, but he was persistent in carrying out his course. So in time, he separated from me and ended the marriage. But I felt Jehovah's support in so many ways. One in particular was a couple who would call.
They'll never actually give a reason why, for obvious reasons, that she won't go into detail about why he turned apostate. It's just, he was an apostate now. He left Jehovah, he left the organization, and that's it. But they never will give like an actual reason. Like, oh, well, he was, disenchanted by the 1975 kerfuffle and was like, you know what, I did some independent research and found out that 607 was bunk too, and blah, 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 so on and so forth. But no, they just, he turned apostate, the elders tried to help him, but he didn't want to, and then he left me. And, that's the full measure of the story. But anyway, I just find that kind of fascinating. Yeehaw. Batteries are changed. Okay. Camera ran out of battery, but we are back in it. One other thing about that little, when she said he turned apostate, I guess I should move that for sound reasons, is that what if he was discouraged because there was a scriptural teaching that he didn't agree with? He said, you know what? I think the organization, they have, this section of the Bible or this particular teaching wrong. And so the brothers try and tell him, well, you just got to wait on Jehovah. You got to wait on Jehovah. And then later on, the governing body flips and says, oh, okay, well, now we have this new light. What if this guy's marriage was torn apart? What if this guy's life is completely torn apart because he was correct about a Bible teaching? And the only reason I bring that up is because I know of people that have had the exact same thing happen to them. One of my good friends who was an elder for quite some time, and he even told me some stories about how this exact same scenario would happen, where someone would turn out to be turn apostate because of a biblical teaching. And he was always framing it as, well, how sad it was that they couldn't wait on Jehovah. But looking back, you think, well, what if this whole scenario was caused by the organization getting it wrong and this guy being ahead? And when you have this whole new light Holy Spirit thing, by their logic, you could say, well, Jehovah was using this guy, and yet the organization wasn't listening to him. Anyway, I just think of those little thought experiments, because how awful would it be for that to have happened, and then everyone's lives is turned upside down. But irregardless, we will press on at 14:03.
Call me often, and they would have me to their home, and they never wanted me to feel alone. Then another blessing came later when I moved to Mississippi, and I became partners with a sister who was 20 years older than me. She had been in the 7th class of Gilead, and she had been special pioneering for 30 years. So you can imagine she was a tremendous help to me. More blessings came later when I married Tom and began serving at Bethel. So feeling Jehovah's support at a difficult time and experiencing his blessings is unforgettable.
Sister Chicky, thank you so much for sharing that experience with us. In the introduction, we referenced the example of Phoebe, that faithful Christian sister. Interestingly, our Kingdom song number 137, entitled Faithful Women, Christian Sisters, is based on the description of Phoebe at Romans 16:2. The lyrics of that song remind us that our Christian sisters show a faithful spirit we all can imitate. And that's true of the sisters we interviewed today. The song concludes with the words, Christian sisters, may Jehovah keep you firm in your conviction. Your prize is drawing near. How we appreciate the example set by all of our faithful Christian sisters.
Anyway.
Thank you, Brother Myers. We thank you, sisters, as well.
They watch him talk.
There are so many faithful wives around the world who support their husbands, who are putting kingdom interests first. We thank you and pray for all of you. Now we have the pleasure of hearing from another member of the governing body, Brother Loosh. He will speak on the subject, we do not give up. Brother Loosh, we look forward to your discussion.
Yes, we do. Whoa.
Some of us have been in the truth for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, or more. During our life, we may have been confronted with various tests or challenges. Still, we did not and we do not give up the truth and our precious relationship with our Heavenly Father. Also, we do not give up preaching the Word of God. 2 Corinthians chapter 4:16 is the theme scripture I've selected for this talk. Please locate that with me. 2 Corinthians 4:16.
Yeehaw.
It says, therefore, we do not give up, but even if the man we are outside is wasting away, certainly the man we are inside is being renewed from day to day. As it said, we do not give up, and we do not give in when it comes to temptations. 1 Peter 3:6 encourages us to not give in to fear. Deuteronomy 13:6 tells the Israelites that when a false prophet becomes active, you must not give in to him or listen to him.
Oh, turn it off now, boys.
In the Sermon on the Mount, according to an alternate rendering, Jesus told his listeners to pray to Jehovah to not allow us to give in to temptation. On one occasion, Peter encouraged others, quote 1 Peter 3:6, do not give in to fear.
So this whole little string is one of the reasons why I found myself talking while the governing body members were giving their talks, because he literally just spent like 2 or 3 minutes, maybe longer, I don't know. I start to doze off after a while, but saying the exact same thing over and over. Hey, Deuteronomy says don't give up. Peter says don't give up. 2 Corinthians says don't give up. The alternate rendering on the Sermon on the Mount says do not give up. And it's just like, oh my God, okay, yeah, we get it. We're not to give up. That's the theme. Let's pick it up. But anyway, we'll keep going.
We do give ear when somebody gives us good counsel.
Give ear.
We give serious thought when somebody wants to help us. We give comfort to those in need. In the first century, Paul gave comfort to the congregation in Corinth. Please find 2 Corinthians 4:1 with me, and we can read together.
We're already there.
And it says there, therefore, since we have this ministry through the mercy that was shown us, we do not give up. So who were the we? The anointed. 2 Corinthians 3, verse 3 tells the Corinthians, there was the words of Paul, that they are like a letter of Christ, written by him and his friends as ministers, inscribed with the Spirit of our living God. The apostle then in verse 5 humbly acknowledges that the fact that he and the Corinthians were qualified came from God, and in verse 6 that he has adequately qualified Christians to be ministers of a new covenant.
It's like a Bible encyclopedia.
What did Paul refer to when he said in verse 1?
This verse,
Since
this verse,
we
this
have
verse, this
this ministry. He referred to the ministry of that new covenant of which he was just talking about.
What's he even saying?
Please follow the reading of 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, where it says, not that we of ourselves are adequately qualified to consider that anything comes from us, but our being adequately qualified comes from God, who has indeed adequately qualified us to be ministers of a new covenant, not of a written code, but of spirit. In 2 Corinthians 3:18, he says, and all of us, while we reflect like mirrors the glory.
2020, I'm going to pause. Yeah, this is getting really boring, so I'm going to take a quick little potty break, but I'll be right back. Their cat jumped in here in the meantime. Oh, this is quality content right here. Oh, yep. Bam, bing, bop, bow, bada bing.
Who did he refer to when he wrote
Pow.
all of us? He meant all of the anointed. In chapter 4, verse 1, he says, therefore,
did he already say that?
Since we have this ministry through the mercy that was shown us, the expression therefore refers back to the reason and motivation for the anointed not to give up. In chapter 3, verse 18, he refers to the anointed as being transformed from one degree of glory to another, culminating in the glory they receive when entering heaven. Since the anointed are progressing from glory to glory until going to heaven, they have a strong motivation not to give up, but endure, since there's such a precious price or reward ahead of them. Understandably, Paul said in chapter 4, verse 1, therefore we do not give up. Also in 2 Corinthians 4:16, Paul wrote, therefore
he keeps saying
we
the
do
same
not
thing
give
over
up.
again. Is it just me?
In the 3rd chapter, Paul contrasts the old covenant that was stripped of glory with the new covenant that would, like verse 10 and 11 says, excel with greater glory, a glory that would remain. And 2 Corinthians 3:12 says,
glory, yeah.
Since we have such a hope. What hope? The heavenly hope. Did you note the similarity with chapter 4, verse 1? It said, since we have this ministry.
No.
What ministry was Paul referring to? Was he referring to field ministry in a general sense?
God.
No. He referred to the ministry of the new covenant. In chapter 3, verse 7, he then called...
So honestly, this guy could literally just get up and say, well, what's this referring to? And what's this referring to? And whatever he says goes, because... Please don't knock the camera over. Anyway, but whatever he says goes. So it doesn't really matter. It's like, well, what's he referring to? Well, I'm the only one that really knows. I'm the only one that can really tell you. So you're just going to have to take it at my word. Anyway, but I don't get, like, what is this obsession with since, therefore, who is it referring to? Since, therefore, who is it referring to? Chapter 4, verse 1, do you remember what that said? Chapter 3, verse 4, what did that say? It's so boring. I'm sure he's going to be getting somewhere with it. But anyway, I just had to say my piece because I couldn't hear him talk any longer. Anyway.
Was the ministry of the new covenant a treasure? Since we have this treasure, he said, not just any treasure. It was a great incentive for the anointed in the 1st century to not give up in view of this treasure of the new covenant that involves progressive glory. Paul wrote, therefore we do not give up. Also, the context of the next verses shows that Paul was writing about the heavenly calling that the new covenant made possible. What Paul wrote is a strong incentive for anointed today to not give up. What about the great crowd of other sheep? Paul did not have the great crowd in mind when he wrote the words of 2 Corinthians chapters 3 and 4. In the introduction to his letter, he referred to, quote, all the holy ones. In 2 Corinthians 1, 21 and 22, he says, quote, who anointed us is God. He has also put his seal on us. However, the great crowd is a recipient of the radiant blessings of the ministry of the new covenant. Some time ago, the Watchtower made a general application in principle to the great crowd. Just like the anointed have the treasure of the new covenant and its ministry, the great crowd considers their ministry also a treasure. The great crowd is also determined not to give up in view of the beautiful hope to live forever in paradise on earth. And all of us, no matter what hope, have to endure. Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 8, that we are hard-pressed, some more than others. Please find Psalm 90, verse 10. None of us are exempt from the pressures that can cause discouragement. And it says there,
this feels like one of those talks at a convention right after lunch where you just like fall asleep.
Or 80 if one is especially strong, but they are filled with trouble and sorrow. They quickly pass by, and away we fly. Because of the pressures of life and disappointments, most of us grow weary at times. But we must remember that God never promised that we would have a problem-free life in this old system. Even in the 1st century, God's servants faced adversities, including persecution and poverty. Jehovah does allow his servants to be tempted and tested. For the time of the end, he also foretold earthquakes, wars, increased lawlessness, and pestilences, according to Luke 21:11. In Revelation, he foretold that a figurative horseman on a pale horse will kill a large amount of people. This happened for decades now, but started with the Spanish flu at the end of World War I, where an estimated 500 million were affected, 1/3 of mankind of that time, and about 50 million died. Satan exploits our moments of discouragement, just as a lion takes advantage of an animal when it is most vulnerable.
It's interesting how he brings up the Spanish flu, because one of the reasons that we're able to get a quicker control on diseases and pandemics, or we're more equipped to deal with them than we have been in the past. Therefore, as an example, millions of people's lives are saved because of the advances in science and medicine. But to him, this is all pointing that, the world's getting worse and the world's getting worse. But, how many people used to die from childbirth even 100, 200 years ago versus how many people die in childbirth now? How many people, or what percentage, maybe not the exact number, but what percentage of the population was the recipient during their lifetime of some type of violent crime, 500 years ago between now? And you can go through all of these different metrics and come to a reasonable conclusion, at least in my mind, or from what I've seen, that, the world is actually becoming a better place, a safer place. But he's trying to use this example of, diseases when this pale white horse as fulfillment of God's prophecy.
But we will not give up. We will not give up if others disappoint us. In Bible times, even the most faithful servants of Jehovah may have felt weighed down at times. I have grown weary with my sighing, wrote David. All night long I make my couch swim. With my tears I make my own divan overflow. Why did David feel that way? Because of all those showing hostility to me, he explained. The hurtful actions of others caused David such pain of heart that his tears flowed freely. Still, David did not draw away from Jehovah because of what fellow humans had done to him. And neither do we. Similarly, the words or actions of others may cause us much pain of heart.
Not compelling.
There exists the one speaking thoughtlessly, as with the stabs of a sword, says.
Yeah, I know words that you've said, Garrett Loosh, that caused me a lot of pain whenever I was going through some court cases and I saw with your signature on it, I am not a member of the Watchtower organization. I'm not a leader. I don't control them. However he put it, you can look it up for yourself. Don't listen to me. But yeah, those words, really hurt me. And when I tried to show them to my family members, they weren't interested in even looking at it. And that not being able to say goodbye to my grandma, because of your words, they really hurt me. And I'm guessing he's about to say there exists one speaking thoughtlessly, or whatever the proverb is. But the reason I paused it is it just me, or is this very incoherent? And if you're still watching, which not very many of you are, but if you're still around, most people know that I'm not the most eloquent speaker. I'm not going to be holding a rally where, 1,000 people are like, woo, yeah. But to me, this seems very incoherent. Like, I don't really see how people are even going to be awake during this, because this is rough. But anyway.
Proverbs 12:18. When the thoughtless one is a Christian brother or sister, the stab wound can go deep. The human tendency may be to take offense, perhaps harboring resentment. This is especially true if we feel that we have been treated unkindly or unjustly. We may find it hard to talk to the offender. We might even deliberately avoid him or her. Weighed down with resentment, some have given up and have stopped coming to Christian meetings. How can we avoid playing into the devil's hands when others disappoint or hurt us? We must try not to harbor resentment. It can hurt us so much that we start suffering from depression. Instead of giving in to depression or aggression, take the initiative to make peace or settle matters as quickly as possible. Colossians 3:13 urges us, continue forgiving one another freely if anyone has a cause for complaint against another. We do not have to.
This is a trend that I've been noticing because I've been going through whenever I have any spare time and just trying to make a archive of all of like the Watchtower just clips and videos, just so I can, do a search and then I can find something like a very specific quote or something like that very quickly. But it's something that I've come across a lot where they just tell people to ignore their problems. I actually have a folder just in my little archive just for every time they're mentioned, just ignore your problems. Just don't think about it. Just try and make peace. And he's not giving any real advice here. He's not telling someone how to deal with a depression. Okay, you've been wronged. Okay, suck it up. And just go and make peace. Don't be aggressive. And I might be wrong on this one, but I think the reason that they go on about this is because basically the organization functions as a social club, and that's one of the major reasons why people stay in it, is because of their friends and their family. And so by having any sort of infighting or any frustration with fellow members, it takes away almost the number one thing that people are there for. And if you take the number one reason that someone's there, it might give them, enough space to be able to actually start asking themselves questions about what they believe versus, oh, I'm just part of this large herd. So I've just found that really interesting, that it comes up a lot where they, don't really think too hard about these. Jehovah will take care of everything in the end. Just make peace with your brother. Even if you've been wronged, just make peace. It'll be fine. But anyway.
To fall prey to Satan, Jehovah and Jesus are on our side. How can we find encouragement to endure? Jehovah deeply cares about those who may be discouraged. Acts 17:27 shows he's not far off from each one of us. Jehovah comforts and strengthens us through loving brothers and through his Spirit and his Word. Reading the Bible daily and meditating upon it helps. The publications have encouraged us to read the Bible through once a year. Why not make it your resolve to try such a program? Nasho Dori, an anointed brother from Albania who persevered under ban, said, "My goal was to read the Bible for at least 1 hour each day, which I did for some 60 years before my eyesight failed." Was he bragging when saying this? No. It helped him not to give up under the extreme communist dictatorship. We do not necessarily expect you to read the Bible for 1 hour each day, but we encourage you to read it through in 1 year and read it slowly enough that you can meditate on it. About 20 minutes a day provides ample opportunity to read and meditate on what you read. If you read so you hear your own voice, it will help you to read slower and to meditate. We also find encouragement through his organization, things we read in the literature or magazines, and we greatly benefit from the congregation meetings. We also benefit from sweet association with our brothers, be it live or via television, So, do not give up. Elders, when they shepherd, are also a big help for many to persevere. Publishers in our congregation do a lot to strengthen us. According to Hebrews 10:25, it is God's will that we keep encouraging one another, and doing so is more urgent now than ever before. Let us always keep in mind the inspired words of 2 Thessalonians 3:13. For your part, brothers, do not give up in doing good. Galatians 6:9 similarly says, quote, let us not give up in doing what is fine, for in due time we will reap. What do we conclude from this? It is the words of our theme text, 2 Corinthians 4:16. We do not give up.
Thank you, Brother Loosh. May we all be determined to follow that scriptural advice and not give up, no matter what we face ahead during these last days. And we'd like to remind all of you that the concluding segment of the annual meeting will be posted on February 1st, 2021, right here on JW Broadcasting.
And right here on JW Thoughts. We'll be actually trying to get it out on time. We'll see how we do with this one, though. Well, there you have it, the second part of the annual meeting. I have to say that concluding talk by Garrett Loosh was one of the most uneventful talks I've ever listened to. So if most of you have turned it off by now, hey, that's totally fine. If you enjoyed this, please feel free to drop a like down below. Subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing a lot more different types of variety things moving forward. And until next time, we'll see you later.